Got me falling right back.
Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing something a little different. I'm going to be grinding out the ladder. I don't get a lot of time to do that because I work a full-time job. So we're going to go from gold 4 to gold 3 and we're going to play however many games it takes to get there. Luckily for us, I am running an Esper control list. Of course, it's my own Esper control list. Let's get into the list. I call it Esper's family because Esper has a lot of friends in this one. We have Liliana, Teferi Time Raveler, Kaya, and God-Eternal Kefnet. I'll go over those cards in depth when I get to them. So we run 1 Search for Azcanta, we run 2 Cast Downs and 2 Moment of Cravings. I've played around a lot. I feel like this is the best combination of those 2 cards to deal with the threats that need to be dealt with so we don't get shut down by aggro. We run 3 Dovin's Vetoes, not much more needs to be said about that. 3 Thought Erasures, we run 2 Teferi Time Ravelers, we run 4 Absorbs, 1 Kaya Orzhov Usurper, which is so important to have it in this list because it helps you stabilize against aggro, it also gives you another win condition, and it also disrupts any graveyard shenanigans your opponents are trying to pull off. We run 3 Mortifies because we have to pretty much run those for our opponent search for Azcantas, we have to run them for the black enchantment for 2 that amasses 1 every turn, etc. 1 Oath of Kaya. I don't run more than 1 because I don't feel like we need any more deal 3 damage, gain 3 life cards in the deck, and in theory that's mostly what that is. But having 1 out against aggro can be extremely powerful. It pretty much makes your planeswalkers invulnerable because they can't afford to attack them without gaining you too much life to where they can't kill you fast enough. 1 God-Eternal Kefnet because turns out when you run 18 cards that this can proc in your deck, so nearly 1/3 of the deck, she's pretty powerful. She's a recurring threat against control, which is always very annoying for control to deal with, and anything you draw into with her is probably going to help you win the game when you draw into it. So any of the cards in this deck, you can play Cast Downs for 1 mana, Moment of Cravings for 1 mana. You can play Thought Erasure for 2, but still, you're playing an extra Thought Erasure. You can play Mortifies for 2. You can play Chemister's Insights for 2. You can play Vraska's Contempt for 2. You can play Kaya's Wrath for 2. You see the theme here. She is very powerful. So when you draw one of those cards, your first card of your turn, so like as soon as you draw that, you can play it for 2, plus you get to keep the copy that you drew. So in theory, it's basically giving you card advantage, and it can be very powerful. We run 2 Hero of Dominarias, don't need to say much more about that, and 1 Liliana. This is my list. It may be a little different than other people's. This is the list that I've been having the most luck with. So without further ado, I will get into the matches. I hope you enjoy. So pretty good mana start right now. We have all the colors that we need. Cast Down and Moment of Craving in our starting hand will be very good against aggro, not so good against control. If we see blue, we'll know our cast down was probably a mistake. If we see any other colors, we probably know it's okay. Hunted Witness, not worthy of cast down or Moment of Craving. We will leave it alone. We will Thought Erasure to get ahead of what's happening right here. Search for Azcanta is very tempting to keep on top, but I think curving into our land is more important. So a Tesla drops, we know that he's going to be trying to sacrifice things to deal damage to us. We cast down just to give us the option of a Kaya's Wrath next turn. Not that we're going to take it, but we didn't know what he drew into and if it could have been like a very major threat. We're deciding whether we want to Kaya's Wrath and take the 10 damage and be at 7, but we don't do it. We're playing a little greedy right now. We know that if we don't kill his creatures, he doesn't have a whole ton of damage on board, and he's also afraid to attack into a settle. We went ahead and played the Chemister's Insight because we really needed to hit our land drop that turn. Again, he's afraid of playing into a settle. We know he's afraid of playing into a settle, so we're kind of giving him the illusion that we have one, which allows us to play a little slower than if he was being more aggressive. So we have a lot of hard decisions to make here. Liliana gives us a blocker to further return something to hand. Kaya's Wrath clears the board, but we die. We decide to go ahead with the Moment of Craving. This leaves us the option of Absorb on his turn. He doesn't have lethal just by attacking, so... And again, we have 4 mana open, so he thinks we have a settle in hand, which will continue to save us. So we drop the Teferi, and we untap the 2 lands because we know it leaves us the Absorb open still. Our opponent was 7 on board. Yep, Liliana is a great Absorb target. We assume he attacks the Teferi here, and he does, which actually bodes pretty well for us. So we come out 1 life ahead on that play. And Oath of Teferi is really good on this turn. We'll take care of his other threat. Now we have no more things on the board that are going to deal damage to us when they die, so we can feel safe playing our Kaya's Wrath. So patience paid off for us with those plays. We will take 4 here. Liliana is a great play. Cast Down's also good, so with Cast Down, play Liliana. We will create a token and cast down one of his flyers. That way he cannot kill our Liliana. And it gives us a blocker against his 2 cards that he has that are ground based. We will purposely block the Death Touch creature to let him generate his extra tokens. Mortify is another really good draw in this situation. So we're counting land to make sure we have enough to play Teferi, return the 1/1 that makes a token to his hand, mortify one of the flyers, and then make him sacrifice 2 creatures. We will wait until his turn, just in case, because Absorb or Mortify works here. If he plays a creature or a card, we can absorb it and we won't die, or we can kill one of his creatures and we won't die. So we're at 1 life. Now's our time to stabilize and come back. We'll throw down a blocker. Create another token. And we have an Absorb open, so no matter what he plays, we will counter it and draw the conceit out of our opponent. On to the next one. So we started 2 ticks into gold. We just barely started playing the ranked ladder this season. I work around 60 hours a week at my job, so I don't have a whole lot of time for ladder play, unfortunately. Search for Azcanta on curve against healers. A mono white list is fine. It will help us find the answers we need, which are mainly board clears. So there's one. Debating on whether keeping the Absorb is more important than Teferi Time Raveler. We decide that Teferi Time Raveler is going to gain us a better value because it will negate 2 damage and force his attack into it. Also, he will allow him to generate his board more, and hopefully we can draw into a white land to Kaya's Wrath. We do not. So at this point we realize we're going to have to probably sack our Teferi. And that is the decision we make to return his Resplendent to hand. Let's slow down the tempo of this game and make him regenerate a board. We need our search for Azcanta right now, so him wasting a turn trying to kill it is very good for us. We don't need the black land, we need white, so we will throw it in the graveyard. Fortunately, we drew it. We're not too worried about Akaya's Wrath this turn. We know he's probably going to drop Resplendent or something else again. So he drops the Ajani's Pridemate, we have Akaya's Wrath for the following turn, and he overcommits with the Resplendent Angel, and that will probably be the game. An overcommit against Esper is generally a bad idea. We have enough to Akaya's Wrath and Thought Erasure, so no matter what threat he has in his hand, we will get rid of it. Wizard Ajani's Welcome, not a big threat. So with Azcanta flipped, I'll tell him good game, because at this point we have won. I don't know if he realizes that or not yet. Maybe after the Absorb. Alrighty, maybe after the Teferi. We'll untap for the Dovin's Veto, and just like that, came in handy. There we go. So we get the conceit of our opponent, we will move on to our next game. Decent land base, not a great starting hand unfortunately. Without any 2-cost removals. Without Thought Erasure or Dovin's Veto, Cast Down, etc. We generally have a pretty hard time against some things. A Thought Erasure from our opponent on curve is very bad for us. We did not have a Thought Erasure of our own to answer him. We'll keep Absorb open. Yep, we can't let him have card advantage at this point. We're already too far behind. We play Teferi on a Hope and a Prayer, basically. Yep, Vraska's Contempt. So we're up against another Esper control list that his starting hand curved out better than ours. Thought Erasure in your starting hand with Esper control is very, 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 very powerful. We will throw that back in our graveyard to hopefully try to fatigue him out of removal. Again, we can't allow him to draw cards. It's unfortunate that we are having to use our counter spells on his draw rather than his threats. Teferi on curve. So everything this guy has done so far has been perfectly on curve. We have been off curve. We'll throw down God-Eternal Kefnet again, force another removal out of his hand. Yep. Unfortunately, we're drawing into Mortify's and Akaya's Wrath and Cast Down over Vraska's Contempts and the like. So we're drawing a little backwards to deal with an Esper control list. We're on all our creature removal threats rather than our anti-control threats. Again, we'll put pressure on the board with God-Eternal Kefnet. Force another removal out of his hand. If we don't draw an answer for Teferi by the time he hits 8, we will hit the concede button and move on to the next one. Both of Teferi to try to slow his Teferi down. He will negate it. Let him do that because we have to hold our Dovin's Veto open for evidently a Thought Erasure. We were hoping to hold our Dovin's Veto open to play after we play our Planeswalker removal, but we have not drawn into any Planeswalker removal yet. There's a few things that could help us out here. We could draw into another Teferi, we could draw into either of the Teferis actually. We could draw into a Vraska's Contempt. Our opponent with significant card advantage at this point. Can't afford to keep Kefnet right now. We draw into a land. Kaya Orzhov Usurper is not what we needed to draw into at this point, so we'll hit the concede button. His Teferi's at 8, we would have, you know, at that point, we're just so far behind, we're not going to be able to win. So our opponent, luck of the draw, gets us that time. Again, no blue land in our starting hand. Seems to be a theme. We're either missing blue or white usually. So our opponent on mono red with a very aggressive start. If we don't draw a land, our next turn we have lost this game. I should rephrase that. If we do not draw a... Yeah, so we don't draw a land, we hit the concede. 2 mana on 4th turn is not going to be enough to beat mono red, no matter what we draw into at that point. It is pretty unlikely we can win that game, so we'll move on, and for the sake of time, for our opponent's time and our own time, we will take the loss and move on to the next one. So we're 2-2 so far with the deck. A little bit of better land start this time. Teferi Time Raveler, return it to his hand. Let's slow down his tempo and gain some card advantage. It also saved us 3 damage to face. We have Absorb and Dovin's Veto open right now. We will absorb that card. Normally we would not absorb that, but because we don't have any other options in our hand, we felt safe playing it. We don't have any board clears. So we're up against a Featherless. We know what he's trying to do. He's trying to play some creatures and then play a whole bunch of buff spells on them over and over, recurring every turn. I built one of these decks. Actually, this is one of the first decks I experimented with when War of the Spark came out. Absorb and Dovin's Veto is more important than Kaya's Wrath, we feel at this point. Now we have the mana to play the Kaya's Wrath and a Dovin's Veto, so we will do that. In a standstill with our opponent, there's the Feather card. We're not going to allow him to play that. That is how he wins the game. One more card to flip the search for Azcanta, but Vraska's Contempt was just too important to keep in hand. We will not use it until he plays all of his cards on his 10th District Legionnaire, so we'll wait to see how many he's going to burn on it before we use the removal. Just 1. Still, 2 for 1 is better value than 1 for 1. Thought Erasure is good, and we transform our search for Azcanta. Nothing in his hand is super worrisome for us. We'll get rid of the Girdle just because that's one of the things he can play recurringly in the same turn. Dauntless Vanguard is sort of bad for us, but we have a lot of ways to take care of it in the deck. Not a problem. We take the Kaya's Wrath over the Teferi. It was a hard decision. We could have bounced his Adanto to hand and then maybe drawn into a counterspell, but we didn't know we were going to draw into the counterspell, and we didn't know what threats he was going to draw into, and without any hard removal in hand, we felt like we had to take the Kaya's Wrath. So Absorb over Moment of Craving, again, because his creature will just keep reanimating. We will Dovin's Veto that card, because it's trying to put counters on it, which is permanent. Again, he's trying to put counters on it, which is permanent, so we will counter it. He plays Tajik, swings in for 6, and we are at 6. Vraska's Contempt is really good. So we can stall this game out and probably stabilize with that draw. Both deal 3 damage to us, so we're debating on which one we want to kill. We might not have another opportunity to get rid of the Azcanta Vanguard, so we're probably going to go with the Vraska's Contempt. Tenth District Legionnaire. Debating on the counterspell or not. The counterspell will put us above lethal range, but we will exile his Azcanta Vanguard instead. We'll take 6. So at this point, drawing Kaya Orzhov Usurper is very good, but we need to make sure we can counter what he plays, and he concedes. So, pretty good land draw again. Let's throw a Pain Land in tapped first. So the general first play with this deck is to throw a Pain Land in tapped. So judging on what we see our opponent dropping, this is probably, we know that this is probably a Gates deck. Circuitous Route, we do not want him ramping, and he used all his mana to play that, so we will counter it. We don't have enough to play Kaya and a counterspell in the same turn, so that is why we held off on playing her. Gatebreaker Ram gives us a chance to draw some cards. We need to pay the life because we want to be able to play Teferi Time Raveler, return his creature to hand, and also be able to counterspell. And it was the correct decision because an Eldritch Reborn came out. We have to decide whether we want to keep mana open for Chemister's Insight or play Kaya this turn. Kaya seems like the correct play. Green and black have a lot of graveyard reanimation options open to them, so we figure they've probably got at least one in their deck. We will activate our Teferi, which will allow us to Kaya's Wrath on his turn when he declares attackers. So we wait for his attack, we play Kaya's Wrath, and we kill his gate. So we just drew into Vraska's Contempt, which is very, very nice for us in this circumstance. It takes care of a lot of threats that this deck has. At this point, it's just a waiting game. We're not in a hurry. We have a pretty nice suite of removal in our hand that can answer a lot of different threats. Moment of Craving probably being the one we need the least, so if we see no play from our opponent, that's the route we're going to take. Our opponent roping his turn out. I really dislike people who do this. I would imagine he's tilted right now because Teferi is stopping him from playing whatever shenanigans he wants to do at the end of our turn. I'm sure Wilderness Reclamation is in his list from the cards that he's been playing and the way he's playing. He also has a splash of blue in there, I'm sure, for Hydroid Crisis. No play from our opponent, we will discard our cast down and draw some more cards. It was a good play because we had some really dead draws coming up. So it's a good thing we got past them, so we can move into things we do need. Cast down, not too bad in this matchup, but Moment of Craving is pretty useless. Man, Teferi Time Raveler is just such a good card, and there's the concede from our opponent. On to the next one. So not a great land starting hand, but like I said, I don't like to take mulligans in best of one generally, unless I just have no land at all. If I have 2 land, I have to keep it. We have Moment of Craving and Cast Down both available. We wait to play it, and we were rewarded with a Chijik to kill before he can proc its ability to make his other guy bigger. Again, we're sitting on 2 lands. Very bad for us. We will kill his creature before Aurelia can boost it, so he cannot get the extra damage through. We pay for the land. That way we have the Mortify open. We just need to make sure we play the Mortify before his combat phase so that he doesn't get the boost on a haste creature. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Again, cast down. So we're doing pretty well for being land screwed. Our opponent on 5 lands, we are on 3, and we're on 2. So we've missed a lot of tempo plays. Luckily, what saved us is being able to draw into Cast Down and Moment of Craving in our starting hand. So I talk about those, they're very good. Again, we don't draw into our land. So we're pretty worried at this point with our opponent on 6 lands and us on 3, but we finally draw into our land and we feel a little safer now. 4 lands is pretty much the start of where we can survive. We're gonna go ahead and Chemister's Insight to try to hit another land drop, and we do. So with our 5th land drop, we know that we have a pretty good chance of winning this game. We are going to take a lot of damage here and be very close to death, but thus is aggro, so we are at 1 life. Kaya's Wrath, we're on a hope and a prayer here that he does not draw into any direct damage. He does not. So now we have some hard decisions to make. Card draw is probably the most important thing right now, so Teferi comes down. It also allows us to play a Dovin's Veto on any burn spells he may have in hand. Unfortunately, we do not have 3 open for an Absorb, but that's okay. That's not a haste creature. That's very good for us. We will drop down a blocker, because at this point we can untap our lands and have an Absorb open. Also a Dovin's Veto, which also gives us the option of playing Chemister's Insight to draw into more answers. So yep, we'll go ahead and gain the life, because being at 4 is pretty safe against aggro decks when you have a blocker out on the field. They generally need 2 cards to kill you rather than 1. They'll kill our card, it won't matter, we will just put it back on top of on 3rd from the top of our deck, and Kaya will drop down, and that kind of seals the game. If he continued playing after this, I would have been very surprised, and he realizes what's going on, so he concedes. 1 more win to get to Gold 3, which I know, lowly Gold 3 is not like, oh, I've made it so far, but with my work schedule, every time I can just grind out like one division of, I guess you would call it like a division inside the ring. So anytime I can grind out a division, I'm pretty happy. I know that I'm more than capable of making it to Mythic, but the problem is I just don't have the time. So Thought Erasure on curve, finally we draw Thought Erasure on curve. This guy's running a pretty interesting list, so this should be a fun game. Well, looks like we're going to play the land screw game again. So we'll go ahead and kill his creature before he can get any extra value off of it by creating tokens. Again, we do not draw into our land. This deck's running 24 lands. It may need to run 25 or 26, I don't know. I mean, the problem is the top end is Liliana at 6, but there's only a 1 of. And besides that, it's just Teferi at 5 and everything else is 4 or lower. So 24 seems pretty much the most important thing is just curving out to 4. We don't really need to curve higher than 4 to stay alive. So that's why I went with 24, but maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, someone correct me in the chat. So finally, we draw into our land. We will have to use our Kaya's Wrath right now, which allows us to have a Kaya's Wrath for the following turn, which unfortunately allows him to get his Planeswalker down. Kaya Orzhov Usurper is a pretty good dropper right here. We know he's just going to be creating more tokens, so we kind of want to save our Kaya's Wrath so that we have an answer to a bigger board state than what he has right now. So if we kill one of his tokens, he still doesn't have enough to kill our Kaya with his other token, which is good for us. So there you go, Thief of Sanity, which is a very important card to remove. So we will go ahead and Kaya's Wrath, gain some life. Luckily Kaya's out, so we have a way to keep taking care of his tokens. We're going to Thought Erasure because he has one card we don't know about. It's a Hostage Taker, so that was the correct play. Thought Erasure of his own. I would imagine he takes the Absorb. He does. So here, Moment of Craving is a pretty safe play because we know he has 2 Mortifies in hand. We hit our 5th land drop. We're actually not, it didn't look too good for a second, but we're actually sitting pretty well right here. We're slowly gaining life back with our Kaya Orzhov Usurper, which can answer his tokens. We've got 2 Mortifies in hands for any threats he plays. So we know we can buy a couple times. The first turn that he is not able to generate a threat, we will be able to draw 2 more cards off Chemister's inside. So we're pretty happy with this position right now. And Teferi will probably seal the deal here. We're not sure if we want to drop it just yet. We're kind of debating on what to do. We can clear his entire board with Vraska's Contempt, but we decide the safest thing to do is to play the Teferi anyways, because it still leaves a Mortify open. So we'll exile his token, which we'll lose our Planeswalker, but we will have the mana open to mortify his creatures, so he won't be able to attack our Planeswalker. He knows we have the Mortify, so we'll make sure that we played the one that he already knows we have. Dovin's Veto is excellent. That means any Vraska's Contempts or Elder spells this guy may be running will be negated. Teferi at 6, our opponent with no answers in hand. One Dovin's Veto to buy time for one of the hands. It's looking pretty good here. We may be able to get Teferi's ultimate off to win this one. Opponent draws into a land. I think that will seal his fate. And our opponent realizes that and concedes. I hope you enjoyed the matches and kind of see where the strengths and weaknesses lie in an Esper controlled list. I wanted to play this list because I wanted to climb the ladder, and we achieved what I wanted to achieve. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day, and as always, enjoy life.